Hey, Bill O'Reilly here. Welcome to the No Spin News for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Stand up for your country. Well, about 1:30 in the morning, I got a text from President Trump from Japan. It was the daytime there. And he said that the trip is going very well. And at this point, all the news reports back that up. Good deal in Malaysia. A good deal in Japan, where they are treating Mr. Trump with more respect than I've ever seen Japan treat an American president, going way back. And they're doing that for their own self-interest because Japan needs the United States, number one, economically, and number two, to protect it from China. So Japan has a big vested interest. Anyway, I was very happy to hear from President Trump. It was nice of him. I don't take this stuff for granted. But I will tell you again, and I know this sounds like bragging, we have the best sources in the world when it comes to the Trump administration. I don't understand why everybody in the country isn't a BillO'Reilly.com premium member. If you really want to know what's going on, okay, and our record is stellar. And we're entering, ending year one of the second term of Donald Trump. And I can't remember ever misreporting anything in the 5 years he's been president because we have such good access. Anyway, I am bragging a little bit, but it's for your benefit. Now, going forward, the president's optimistic about his meeting with the Chinese on Thursday. He stays till Sunday in Asia, so he's got a good amount of time. He's saying he wants to go up and visit the North Korean nut. Okay, it doesn't really matter to me whether he does or doesn't. He just wants to calm that down in case this loon would launch a nuke or something, geez, ridiculous. But the Asian trip is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. So China looms on Thursday, as I mentioned, but the Chinese have not confirmed that meeting. This is what they always do. So China is a whole different scenario than the United States. And China won't confirm a meeting until it's underway. So they have their own system. I don't object to it. If Donald Trump tells me he's meeting with the Chinese, then he's meeting with the Chinese, unless something blows up. And that's always a possibility, but this isn't Putin. Right? The Chinese government is much more disciplined than the Russian government because there's only one guy that matters in the Russian government. And in the Chinese government, yeah, Xi is the leader, but believe me, there are guys underneath him that have power. In fact, you may have noticed, and we did report it, that last week, Xi wiped out 7 generals. Now, he banished them. And that tells me that there's a little discontent in Beijing. Not sure. We don't get any information about it. We do know those generals and some other civilians were banished. They're out. Okay. So when Donald Trump meets with President Xi, it's likely that Xi will give up the fentanyl stuff. And that's what I talked to the Chinese about last May. It's likely that will be, because that's easy for China. China doesn't make a lot of money from it. They make the precursors to fentanyl. And that's a big thing for Donald Trump. Okay, so they'll give Trump that. And then in return, President Trump will slash some of the tariffs on Chinese goods because China needs our market. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm hoping that they can make some kind of Putin thing where China would back away. Now, last week, China cut its purchases of Russian oil somewhat. I think that was in response to America, but I'm not sure. Very, very hard to get inside stuff until after it happens. As soon as the deal is made, I will know. Okay. Back here, this is a very interesting story. So, according to an online newsletter called Status, the boss of CNN Mark Thompson, ordered his anchors to knock off the White House renovation criticism and concentrate on a far more important story, the Asian trip. Now, I can't confirm that. It's anonymously sourced, but I think it's true. Okay? And that sends a pretty big signal on a number of fronts that the corrupt media in America is frightened. And we'll get into that a little bit later. On the Asian trip itself, I'm not as optimistic as Donald Trump is, but I am thinking that things may work our way. And I said that last night on News Nation. Go. If China will pull away from Putin, because China has propped up Putin by buying Putin's oil. Already, I understand the Chinese have cut back buying Russian oil. They're not going to do it 100%, but they're sending signals.
Any chance you're misreading the signals, Bill?
Sure, absolutely. My sources are the best in the world, but the Chinese are so secretive, and they, nobody ever says a declarative sentence in the whole country. And that's true. You can't ask a question and get an answer. China, people are too afraid. They're not going to tell you anything. And the government is like, that. But the Chinese are not nice boys, as I wrote in the message of the day yesterday. So they can do anything. Now, right at this point, most of the television anchors and analysts and pundits would tell you, we'll see. How many times have you heard that? Well, we'll see. That's not news analysis. That's bilge, B-I-L-G-E, word of the day. I never say, or try never to say, we'll see. Of course we'll see. Why am I wasting your time with trivialities? Let's just review, and then we'll get on to another fascinating story. President Trump believes he'll be successful in negotiating a deal with China. I am fairly optimistic that he is correct. However, there are a lot of things that could happen. But we're not going to see. Things will unfold, and we will report them here accurately. That's the memo. Let's go to the Department of War again. So not only are they blowing up alleged drug boats, but they are blowing up reportage at the Pentagon. So this story came from the Secretary, Pete Hegseth, and he says, you know what? If you are in the Pentagon physically as a reporter, you have to submit what you're going to write or say on radio and television to me before you do it. And I said, that's nuts. All right. And then there was some pushback. Roll of tape. So I got a couple of letters, and I know on social media, some MAGA people are going, that's right, Hegseth, right. Let's make all the press agencies that cover the Pentagon sign a paper that they will not report anything that happens in the Pentagon unless they get permission from Pete Hegseth. Are you kidding me? All right, so everybody pulled out. All the established media, the corporate media pulled out. But there are still organizations that have said, okay, all right, we're gonna play along with this. And one of them surprised me very, very much. So you know that we have the utmost respect for John Solomon's news operation called Just the News. And he's going along with Hegseth. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. I was surprised, John. You're a staunch freedom of the press guy and nobody pushes you around, why would you do that?
Well, first off, these rules are not really any different than what have been in place or what's in the law for years. And I think that that's one of the great parts of the disinformation campaign, that these standards weren't in place for the last 40 or 50 years. The current Press Association goes back to the 1940s, and we made public for everybody to see all the censorship restrictions that the Pentagon Press Pool agreed starting in 1942. By the way, they submitted their work back in those days to a Department of Censorship, just so you know. Now, obviously, that was wartime footing, but the Press Association has always been in a position of having to abide by certain national security rules to gain access to the building. And by the way, just recently, we put out all of the forms that the New York Times, the Associated Press, and others used to visit Gitmo for the trials. And they agreed to...
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
There's a difference between national security reporting, because there's a law.
Yeah.
It goes all the way back to the Pentagon Papers in Vietnam. There is a law.
There is.
If there's classified information that you or me or anybody else reports, and you violate that classified status, government can prosecute you. That's not the same as submitting a routine report to Pete Hegseth that you can say yes or no and tell you what you can and cannot say. Yeah. It's not the same, John. You know that.
That is not what the final rules say. I had my lawyer go through every single line.
All right. So what's the rule? What does Just the News have to do to stay in the Pentagon and report?
Well, by the way, I actually wasn't in the Pentagon. I decided to go into the Pentagon because there's a void. So we didn't have a reporter there. I didn't operate under the other rules. I've been able to cover the Pentagon effectively on the outside. But when so many people left, I decided to make sure we had a reporter there because, hey, we're blowing up Venezuelan boats every couple of days. We're in armed conflict. We had a major thing. I felt it important to have a reporter there, and the rules under which Pete Hegseth asked us to abide by for that reporter in the Pentagon are not any different than what the Associated Press operated under when I was the assistant bureau chief for AP 20 years ago. You can't solicit classified information. You can't go and tell someone, please leak me a classified document.
Nobody has a problem with that. Classified information is different than reporting.
But that's what
these
rules say. That's right. That's what these rules say. They say you can't go to certain parts of the building without an escort. That's always been the case.
That's
it might have been lax. Yep,
but
that's right.
That's not what the press is objecting to. They're objecting to having to submit stories to the defense secretary, the war secretary, and he signs off on it. No,
find me that passage in the final rules. It's not in the final rules. That is the great story. A lot of the people that reported on this bill reported on an earlier set of rules from September. They never showed the public the final rules. I read the final rules. I've published the final rules. There is nothing that says I must submit my story to Pete Hegseth for approval before I do it. It does say I can't roam the building in certain places. It does say that I can't solicit national security information. The final rules, which were published after the shutdown began, and you can't find them in the New York Times stories that mention them, aren't that. Now, we interviewed and I'm going to tell you how this story evolved. The media is reporting what the early rules from September showed, not what was ultimately issued in October.
So you're saying it was revised. There was a revision made by Hegseth. Is that right?
Hegseth in concession to the media.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And the rules that ultimately were published, are no different than what we operated under for the last 20
or 30
years.
I got that point. But I wasn't aware that there was a revision by the Secretary of War.
That may be intentional, by the way.
Sure.
Let me tell you why. The media didn't want people to know what the debate. They wanted to keep the old debate up that this was a censorship debate when it wasn't. Let me tell you what this ultimately came down to. And how do I know this? Because I have the internal emails of the Pentagon press poll to the key handlers in Hegseth's office. What were they objecting to at the end? They no longer objected to any of the restrictions. You can look at this document. It's up on Just the News. They did not want to sign a document that had the words, "We understand the document we are signing." That was the final objection raised by the Pentagon Press Association lawyer, David Schultz, in this memo. They didn't object to anything else in the rules after they were revised.
But Fox News and Newsmax, very pro-Hegseth, very pro-Trump, they pulled out too. So there had to be
Sure.
some kind of onerous provision for them to make that move.
I will tell you, I would never have signed the original rules in September. The rules that came out in October, which, by the way, we weren't at the Pentagon. We decided to step into the void because I think it's dangerous not to have a person at the Pentagon at this moment in history. They did not require me to get any prior consent from Pete Hegseth or anyone at the Pentagon.
Let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
Sure. I didn't know that the rules were revised, and I'm pretty on it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so is my staff. We're on it.
Yep.
Why didn't Hegseth come out and say, maybe we went overboard here. Let's bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Why do you think he didn't do that?
Well, it's funny. I think when you look at the exchange of emails between Hegseth and the Press Association, that was the conversation. Hey, we've made these things. We heard what you said. No, we're not going to require you to do this.
But it wasn't to the public. I don't care about the dopey press. Why didn't Hegseth just sit down, have a press conference?
We'll have to ask Pete why. I don't know the answer. I made the decision.
That is a good question. And now that you're there, and
we're going to ask it for you.
Yeah, you're probably the leading news organization there.
Let's hope so.
You are.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? Why don't you just make this public and tamp it down?
Right.
Because
I do have I can tell you this: the final rules never got published because the office that publishes them got closed by the shutdown. Now I think that's a lousy excuse for not publishing them, and it's a really lousy excuse that the media used to because they didn't publish them in their own stories.
He can type them up.
He can talk anytime he wants. So he owes us. We'll get that explanation.
All right, John. But when you get an answer to that question, let me know. So what are you guys working on now?
I think the big story of the next few days is going to be the next revelations in Arctic Frost, which is an investigation that looks like it was about January 6th and stopping the electors, but really was the second major opposition research project for the Democratic parties that masqueraded as a criminal investigation. We're going to learn in the next few hours, Bill, that over 155 conservatives were targeted in an alleged plot to stop the counting of votes. Now, there can't possibly have been 155 people working together to stop the January 6th count going on. There aren't that many senators even in the Senate chamber. This was launched a year and a half after January 6th occurred. Why do you start a criminal investigation about January 6th a year and a half later? And then why are you widening it to the sort of things we have? So 155 conservatives targeted, 92 groups in addition to those 155, 30 million lines of phone data being gathered, including phone data on 8 sitting senators and a House member. This is Russia collusion too, and what you're doing is the Democrats use the investigative power to build a case against Donald Trump not winning in 2024 and called it a criminal investigation when it wasn't. And I think
and what did Christopher Wray, who's the FBI chief, who had to sign off on this,
and by the way, appointed by Trump. Yeah.
Right. What did he want to accomplish, in your opinion?
It's unclear how well he understood what was going on. It's clear from the FBI agent who opens the case, a guy named Tim Tebow, who is openly anti-Trump. He's the guy that had those anti-Trump messages.
What did he want to accomplish? What did he by tapping these 8 senators and by doing all this nefarious stuff? What was the end game? What did they want?
They wanted to be able to map anybody and everybody that was in support of Donald Trump who could come back and help him in 2024 win re-election again. The reason this doesn't open until the spring and summer of 2024, based on the 2022, excuse me, a year and a half after you think you'd be opening a January 6th investigation, is Trump began looking viable again in the spring and summer of 22. His numbers are coming up. He's on the trail. Nothing has knocked him off his game. And I think at that point they go back to just like Russia collusion.
So what I'm getting from you, and it's a little murky, is that the Justice Department under Biden wanted to show that certain conservatives, both in and out of government, all right, had worked with President Trump to gin up this January 6th riot?
Well, that is what the predicate of the investigation says. But some of the people that I look at don't seem to have any role at all on January 6th.
Oh, no, I'm not. Listen, but I just want to know what they were fishing for. What are you fishing for?
I think they came up with a map of everybody that would be in Trump's 2024 MAGA camp and tried to pin them down with legal liabilities. Get a lawyer, go before a grand jury, have to spend money, get your attention off of winning the 2024 election by fighting.
But why would they have to get a lawyer? Because they colluded to foster a riot? Is that what the ultimate
This investigation
goal was?
is not about the riot. This investigation was purportedly, were they trying to stop, either get fake electors named or stop the counting for a couple days so that more issues
the counting of the election. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let me know what you find out, and
I will,
tell Hegseth I send my best.
I will. We'll get you that answer. I promise.
I don't think he's a fan of mine, but we want to be fair, John. You know that.
Anyone who's a fan of the truth is a fan of yours. I will say.
Okay. Appreciate it. We'll talk. Final thought, as I mentioned, I'm going to do the Mars show. I'm going to do Howie Mandel. I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff in LA to promote Confronting Evil. But the primary reason I'm going is that we have to hire an actor or actress to narrate the movie Confronting Evil. Now, you may remember, if you really have a good memory, that we used Tom Hanks in Killing Lincoln. Roll it.
In the aftermath of the assassination of the many witnesses who claimed to know Booth or to see him on the evening of April 14, 1865, Booth's friend and fellow actor John Matthews later said, "Those who were the wisest knew the least." And the stage is set for the most dramatic and resonant crime in American history.
Hanks did a great job. And I got some big names that are interested in doing this, so I got to go out and chat. And we got to make a decision soon. And we're very pleased with Confronting Evil be selling like crazy, and now it's going to be a movie. So there you go. I'll be out there and tell you all about it. Okay? Thank you for watching and listening to the No Spin News. I'm Bill O'Reilly. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching. To view full episodes of the No Spin News anytime, sign up to become a BillO'Reilly.com premium or concierge member today. Hey, Bill O'Reilly here. Welcome to the No Spin News from Washington, D.C. It is Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. Stand up for your country. So I'm going to see the president this evening. I'll have a full report tomorrow on the No Spin News. It's a cliche now. It's an honor. It's a privilege. Everybody's saying that. They see a turtle crossing the street. They go, "It's an honor to see you." But it really is a privilege for me to go to the White House. I've been there, 20 times in my career. Every time, it's just an amazing sight to see. I'm sounding trivial here, but it's hard to put it into words. It's so much history and so many things have happened there. And it's a symbol of freedom all over the world. So I'll be there tonight. And as I said, will report tomorrow. Now, we have some good news for you. Franklin Graham is going to appear on the program tomorrow. Remember, we were a little disenchanted with Mr. Graham's outfit that did not get back to us after at least 3 phone calls. And I had to mention that, but we have now made friends. And it's an important segment because Franklin Graham, I think, probably the most visible Christian in the United States. And he's using his position, of course, his father was Billy Graham, to try to help Christians all over the world. And now we have President Trump threatening the government of Nigeria. And so this is important. And I had to get the Graham outfit's attention, and I did. And that's my job here. But we are very pleased to have Franklin Graham on tomorrow, in addition to telling you all about my meeting with President Trump tonight. Talking points memo. Donald Trump and the media, I should say Donald Trump and the military and the media coverage of that. That's a little more clear. the military situation. Here is the truth. If you have a pen and paper, you might want to write this down so you know. On January 20th of this year, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order designating drug cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. That list has grown throughout the year. They add various gangs, various situations to the executive order. Okay. The executive order gives the President of the United States the authority under our Constitution to use military force against threats to America, foreign terrorist organizations. That is important for everyone to understand. It is underreported. Now, after the attack on 9/11, 2001, President Bush the Younger went to Congress and got the authority to declare a war on terror. Under that authority, the American president has the lawful right to attack enemies of this country, as long as they are designated in writing. You can't just attack everybody. It's got to be there. You don't need congressional approval. You already have it. Congress already gave Bush the Younger that hat. So that has been used over the past 25 years to wipe out Al Qaeda, bin Laden, ISIS, Soleimani of Iran. And I chronicle all of this in my book, Killing the Killers. If you have not read that book, it is very important that you do so if you care about this at all. All right. Now, there has been an authorization for use of military force, okay? And that happened under President Obama. The authorization for use of military force, AUMF is the acronym. Why President Obama did that is that he made a mistake in withdrawing all U.S. forces out of Iraq, and ISIS took over. Remember that, okay? Half the country. And ISIS killed thousands of people, slaughtered them. President Obama went back in under this authority, not approved by Congress. And to his credit, and to President Trump's credit, because they both combined to do this, both of them, they wiped out ISIS. And you'll remember during that horrific campaign that air power, U.S. air power, and special forces were used. Al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, tracked down, and his 3 young children were killed. It was al-Baghdadi's fault, not our fault, but it was go in and do what you have to do. The orders for the bin Laden raid in Pakistan were everybody dies unless they immediately surrender. Any resistance, boom. And we go through that in Killing the Killers. In addition, there were campaigns before 9/11, and this is fascinating. So Bush the Elder, okay, in December of 1989, the anniversary coming up, invaded Panama. The United States invaded Panama, okay? And 21,000 U.S. troops stormed that country, kidnapped the president, Noriega, brought him to Miami. He was tried as a drug merchant. And Bush the Elder said to Congress, again, no approval of this, but he did alert Congress, said, this Noriega is a threat to the United States because he controls the Panama Canal and there are civilians in danger in Panama. Went in, removed him. Okay? You remember that. I was covering it. And then before President Reagan invaded Grenada, the Caribbean island, because Cuban troops were there. And American medical students in Grenada were threatened, according to President Reagan. No congressional approval. Boom, 7,500 U.S. troops and shooting. In Panama, no, just went in, grabbed them. That was it, government change. Panama, it was some shooting back and forth. Okay, that was Operation Urgent Fury. So you can see that there is a long history, which is very important to understand, about U.S. military action not getting congressional approval and not obeying the rules of war. Because when you go after a terrorist group like ISIS, we blew the hell out of them. Okay, there was no Geneva Convention. There are no ISIS prisoners I know of. They're dead. Not justifying, reporting. I don't know if you could have done it another way. I don't know another way. So now we have Maduro in Venezuela. He's Noriega. Now, President Trump actually told Maduro, we won't arrest you, but you got to get out of Venezuela. You got to leave. You can take your family, some money. Cuba will take you. Brazil will take you. It's not the same thing. But Maduro said no. So Maduro, he's on the clock. That guy's not going to survive this. Whether he's dead or captured, I don't know. I don't think Trump's going to send ground troops in. I don't think so. That's too messy. But certainly air power. And we know that the flotilla of warships is now in the Caribbean, U.S. warships. So it's a very complicated situation. I do expect, with these drug boats being blown out of the Caribbean and the Pacific, and the latest controversy is with two guys that weren't killed, and then the U.S. forces went back and dropped another bomb on the boat, and they were killed. And the Democratic Party and some Republicans, I wouldn't say a lot, but some, are saying, no, this is against Geneva Convention, whatever it may be. It's not the Geneva Convention. It's a totally different thing. Okay, this is a terror designation. It's a whole different thing than a declared war. Get another point of view on this. So I looked around, my staff looked around. I'd say, look, get the best guest, okay? I don't care the point of view. Most of the other news agencies, they just get the point of view that, they have the same point of view as everyone. We don't want that. So joining us now from Ida, Ohio, is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Maurer, and he teaches at the College of Law at Ohio Northern University. He's a former JAG, Judge Advocate General, 2 tours in Iraq. So the Colonel knows what he is talking about. All right, Colonel, where am I going wrong here?
Well, good afternoon, Bill. Thank you again for having me here. You did offer me an opportunity to rebut some of your facts, and I would very much appreciate you holding up that end of the bargain, because I do have some argument here. You mentioned the designated terrorist organization, or the foreign terrorist organization designation. That, unfortunately, does not actually provide any legal authority to use military force against any target. It has very specific, limited applicability. It allows us to do certain things administratively, freeze bank accounts, conduct various investigations, but foreign terrorist organization designation provides no legal authority whatsoever to use military force against them. I just want to make sure that's very, very clear.
Stop you there. If that is true, and that is not what President Trump believes, and
Right.
Not what he believes. If what you're saying is right, why hasn't this been litigated? It hasn't been litigated. There have been no lawsuits. It's not being held by the Supreme Court. And Congress has not proposed any bills at all to limit not only President Trump, but President Biden before him, President Obama before him, President Bush the younger. That litigation does not exist. So if what you're saying is true, why does it not exist?
Well, there are lots of reasons why litigation doesn't happen or doesn't happen right away. One, Congress doesn't have all the facts yet because they've not done thorough investigations.
No, but it's been going on for 25 years now.
Well,
Those
no.
executive
So
orders have been
here's
going
another
on for
point
25
I
years.
want to contrast is that it's a bit of a false analogy to say, well, we've been doing strikes on terrorists before. Yes, we have. The
Right.
difference, though, and it's a critical difference between then and now, whether it was under Trump 1 or Bush or Obama or Biden, the difference was we had both domestic legal authority under an AUMF, and I'll get back to that in a second because I know you're going to go there, a domestic authorization for use of military force, and arguably a basis in international law under self-defense. That applied to those facts.
Again, let me stop you here.
Those
International law
those
does
facts.
not. International law does not trump, pardon the pun, executive orders by a president of the United States. It just
actually, it does. No, actually, it does, Bill. Because
not unless there's a declared war. Look, we got to get specific. I want to get out of the world of theory. Remember,
it's not the world of it's not the world of theory, Bill. The Supreme Court has said
but
international law.
You remember because you were deployed in Iraq that during his first term, Donald Trump dropped a drone on Soleimani, a citizen of Iran, in Baghdad, killed him right outside the airport. Okay? There was not one piece of litigation put forth by anyone, domestically or internationally, that challenged that assassination.
That doesn't mean it's lawful, Bill, and you know that. It doesn't mean it's lawful.
Okay, I mean, but now we're going into the world of theory, Colonel.
No. It's not the world of theory, Bill, because the Supreme Court has said international law does apply, and for two reasons. One, international law, the Geneva Conventions that you've talked about, are a treaty that we have ratified. Because we've ratified it, it becomes part of the supreme law of the land, which is part of the law of the land that the president is obligated under Article 2 to follow with fidelity. That is part of the law. The Supreme Court has said you can't just exercise. I'm sorry?
We're not fighting a war. It's an executive action against terrorism. When Trump bombed Iran, okay, took out their nuclear facilities, we didn't get a declaration of war to do that. He did it under a terrorist EO saying this nation is a danger to our nation and I have to act. Again, no litigation whatsoever, not from The Hague, not from anybody in the United States. So I don't know. Everybody's not obeying the law. Everybody's a scofflaw.
So you bring up lots of precedent, and it's not an invalid argument to make that we've done things before and there was no rejoinder, there was no lawsuit, there was no investigation. That's a fair argument to make. I'll concede that. But that doesn't mean that it is lawful. It doesn't mean it is constitutional. It doesn't mean you can keep doing it.
There's the real world and then there's the theoretical world. And I don't argue theory here. If somebody, and nobody has, Colonel, you're a lawyer, you could file a lawsuit against the Department of War, Department of Defense, whatever you want to call it, saying it's illegal for them to blow these drug boats out of the water. Okay, it will go to the Supreme Court. They'll have to rule on it. I wouldn't mind seeing that, by the way.
I don't have standing to bring a lawsuit in federal court against President Trump for deciding to use force. I just don't, and that's just not how it works. You mentioned the White House being.
You could do it. You could do it. You absolutely could do it. In fact, there's a lawsuit now in the motion, and we're going to report on it tomorrow because we have to do some investigating. One of the families of one of the dope merchants who got blown up has retained an American lawyer to do just that.
Sure. Yeah, representing a victim is different from suing the government for an action that we believe the president doesn't have the authority to take. Two different kinds of
class
lawsuits.
action. You can do a
I'm
class
sorry?
action suit against them. You know that. Come on, you're a law professor. But nobody does it because you're going to lose. Because the precedent, it's precedent after precedent after precedent. You know, the invasion of Grenada, the invasion of Panama, Maduro and
Okay,
and
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the invasion of Panama and Grenada. Let's talk about those two. The legal justification for those two were threats to U.S. citizens, whether that was exaggerated or not.
And that's a legal justification for the drug gangs. Drug gangs, smugglers have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, which is documented.
So have guns. So for us to say, I think it's a false analogy, Bill, a false analogy to say that these drug runners, I am not defending drug runners. Drug runners are criminals. They're heinous. They're terrible. They're violent. I agree, 100%. But they're criminals. And do they do bad things? Yes. But let's think about what they're doing. The drug runners in the Caribbean are sending cocaine. No, they're sending cocaine.
Threats to national security?
They're a threat to safety and public health, but they're not trying to kill Americans. Why would they kill their own customer base? Why would they try to kill their own customer base? They want U.S. citizens to live so that they buy their drugs.
But more people die from the actions of a drug cartel than any jihadist organization by far. So Trump has said they're a threat to national security because they're killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. You're saying that's not true?
I'm saying drugs do have a negative effect, but drug runners, drug cartels, while they're involved in getting the drugs there, this is not splitting legal hairs. This is the difference between crime and war. There's a difference, okay? Drug runners are you call it invasion or whatever, but they're putting drugs on U.S. soil. They're getting into the hands of people who shouldn't have them. Kids, got it. It's terrible. But let's think about all the things that have to happen. These drugs are not being injected into people against their will. They're consumers. They're buying it.
Look, these are organized cartels under the protection of a Maduro, the guy in Colombia, in Mexico, Obrador protected them.
Okay.
So it's got to be a national security. It has to be. All right, I got to wrap it up.
Here's what you do. Here's what you do. Here's what you do. If you believe, and not just you, Bill, but if anyone believes, including President Trump, believes that Maduro is the heart of this, the brain of this, the central actor in all of this.
He's a facilitator, just like Noriega. It's the same thing.
If that is the case, then you tie these groups to him, and you say to Congress, I want an AUMF to go after Maduro. Here's my
look. If it were me, I would run it by Congress. I would, because
that's the right thing to do.
I want to have that power. All right, but you don't have to. Under what Bush the Younger did way back.
Those were different cases involving direct lethal threats. Planes flying into the Pentagon, into the World Trade Center. Direct lethal attacks on civilians. That is not the same thing as drugs being transported. It's just not the same.
Great debate. You should show it to your students. And we'll get a lot of mail, and I'll read all the mail tomorrow. And we really appreciate it, Colonel. And we appreciate your patriotism very much. 2 tours in Iraq. I mean, that tells me a lot. So thank you for helping us out tonight. The tax extension deadline may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you missed the October 15th deadline or owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait makes it worse. The IRS can charge a penalty of 5% per month, up to 25% of your total tax bill just for not filing. That's on top of what you already owe. The good news? There is still time for Tax Network USA to help you. Whether you are self-employed or a business owner, even if your books are a mess, they have got you covered. They specialize in resolving financial chaos and getting you back on track. Your consultation is 100% free. So please call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/bill. Okay, final thoughts. So I'm off to see the wizard. That would be President Trump. Some people think he's a wizard. Some people think he's other names. But for me, as I said, top of the program, just going to the White House. I don't care who's there. And now I get along with Bush the Younger, went to the White House there. Barack Obama, saw him at the White House. Biden deep six me. No way Biden would have anything to do with me. And Donald Trump, of course, has been very kind to my family and myself. So we're going to the little soiree tonight at the White House, and he wants to see me beforehand, and I'm pleased to answer any questions he might have. He's probably going to yell at me, so he doesn't like some of my commentary. What am I going to do? I got to be honest. You know, I'm not here. I'm here for you. And he knows that. He knows me 35 years. He knows the John McCain interview I did with him. He knows. But, you know, he kind of goes, oh, you're not being fair. Okay. And I never debate him. I just go, listen, I'm just a working class guy trying to do my job, which is true. But I will report everything about our White House visit tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it. So much history in there. And I know about it, you know, I researched it so tight. And it just, you know, to think what happened there and who was here, and there I am standing there. I'm very lucky. I think I'm very lucky to have this opportunity. I'm lucky to have you guys watching and listen to me every day. Thank you for doing that. Bill O'Reilly. We'll see you again tomorrow.